Welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Let's cue the intro. This is the #1 podcast to learn marketing strategies for your board game. Whether you're just starting on your first game or an experienced designer, you've come to the right place. My name is Nalin, and let's talk marketing for your game. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Today, we are really lucky to have Mikael Lyck here on the show, and I'm really excited for everything that he has to share with us today. So, Mikael, just welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would first love it if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and also about kind of this project that you launched and got funded and kind of just blew through your goal, and get into that before we go into the marketing parts of it.
Yeah, sure. So I am a man in my best years. I live here in Stockholm, in Sweden, and this is my first game, the Phantom, the card game. And I mean, the game is, as you said, I got it funded in Kickstarter, which was really, really great. I was like hoping to get funded within the period, but now we really broke everything, so that was awesome. The game is strongly themed, and it's based on the comic books about the Phantom. He's the first hero wearing the skin-tight suit, and it was like the comic book was, or not the book, but the comic strip was first published way back in 1936. The game is a cooperative card game for 1 to 2 players, where you play against the game. You play through adventures taken directly from comic books. I'm in my late 30s, and I've been studying game design, but that was mostly about video games. And then after that, I started working with programming. But this game is the first one I started to do by myself. And I have some side projects, but I mean, this was the first one I started with, and the first one I finished with.
Cool. What got you into game design in the first place?
I mean, I've always been fascinated by games. Like when I was, like 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up to like 16, 17, I wanted to play all the time. Like Monopoly, and we had this game called Nya Finans, and we have like Talisman, and I mean, if someone wanted to play a board game with me, I would love it, and I would do it all day if I could. I think I even played like Monopoly against myself. That was quite boring, though.
That sounds like an interesting gameplay.
Yeah, it's like, which do I want, green to win or red? Yeah, or like the ironing board or the car.
Well, I love how you enjoyed playing games since you were really young, 6, 7, 8, and now you're doing this and you're launching something to the world. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I was so like I've been working on this game for 3 years almost. Soon it will be 3 years, and I've been like, even though everyone I show it, or not everyone, but almost everyone I show it to, they just say positive things. You still have this nagging feeling like maybe it's not good enough, and then when you send it out to like people who've never known me or anything like that, and they also say positive things, it's so great.
Yeah, that must be an incredible feeling. So you said you were working on this game for about 3 years before you launched it. Can you tell me how you kind of promoted your game, you marketed your games throughout the process before you launched?
Yeah, I mean, we're on like a shoestring budget. It's basically my money. And before the campaign, I mean, we had a newsletter and a Facebook page, but neither was that big. So like, what I have been doing like the last years is that I've tried to be active in a lot of forums and and pages on social media like Facebook and Reddit and such, and just trying to get my name out there. And when they had this like days, the conventions near Stockholm, I've been there showing up the game or the prototypes for, starting like 1.5 years ago. But we felt like the marketing, like ads and such, we wanted to wait. It's a team nowadays. I started and I've done the game design, but I have a team with like a friend called Dejan Holmstrand, who is the graphical designer who made sure the cards looked great, and Johan Rams, who is like the business manager, who tries to do all the tie all the connections with the printers and retailers out there. So we decided, like we were talking about, since almost everyone says like, oh, you need to have a really big mailing list, you really have to have so and so many emails before you launch. But we still felt like if we're going to pay for ads, it's better to do it during the campaign. So every time someone clicks, it is like they back. Otherwise, they need to like first click to join the email group and then register for the email. And then when we say, oh, now you have to go to the Kickstarter, they need to click again, and then they have to create the Kickstarter account and back. So we were actually not that much before doing promotion.
Got it. So you mentioned, you were on a shoestring budget. You had things like newsletter, a Facebook page. You were starting to become active in communities. I'd like to really dig more into kind of these topics, especially being active in communities. Would you mind talking through like how you picked which community between like Facebook and Reddit, and also what you kind of did to get your name out there?
Yeah, Facebook and Reddit was the big ones because that's where I spend most of my free time, basically. And I choose, it started out with like the game designer groups because they are great. And like if you have any questions, they're always really, they really want to help. So I started out there and then moved into playtesting groups and gaming groups in general around the local area. And that was basically also because I wanted to have more and more playtesters. But even if I didn't get playtesters every time, I would get out the name of the game out there. Like if I say, oh, I'm working on this game, it's called this and this. Do you want to meet up and I can buy you a beer and you can playtest the game, basically? And even if they don't show up, they now know about the game. And when you ask questions about I'm going to do a campaign, how does this work, people are going to start recognizing your name. But it's also, after a while, you get the knowledge so you can help others, and that's also great. So it's a win-win being active in this social media places, in my opinion.
Got it. So being in the community and not only asking questions, but then offering feedback, just kind of build this kind of brand recognition or game recognition around you.
Yeah, and it's not all about that. Yeah. You want to help other people as well, because like if we build a better community, it's going to be better for all of us. If we all do better games, then it's going to be a better place.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Reddit too. A lot of people who want to launch their games want to use Reddit, but they just don't really know how. Can you tell us more about your process of kind of introducing yourself into the Reddit community, introducing your game, and kind of what you did for that?
Yeah, well, Reddit is a bit harder because there's this, I'm not sure if it's unwritten, but it feels like an unwritten rule that it's really bad to self-promote on Reddit. So you really need to, if you want to show off your game, it should really be with a question, and then it should be a real question, not something you just figure out to get people to go to your page, but it should be like where you really want feedback, and that's where it shines, because the comment section there it's good, but Reddit users do not see kindly on people who just say, "Oh, go and buy my game." Basically, you need to have some substance to your post on Reddit, I would say.
Got it. And for your pre-launch period, that before you launched the Phantom, the card game, what was kind of the thing that you spent the most time and energy on when it came to marketing?
I took a long time. Like, you have to get all the previewers, signed and get them games before the launch of the campaign. And like I said, I was on a budget, so I looked through so many previewers and reviewers and what kind of games they like, what kind of games they didn't like, so I would get the ones that suited best for me. And that, I would say that's a big part of my marketing, was basically getting previewers that have some audience or really enjoyed that kind of game.
Got it. And what kind of considerations did you look at when you were looking through previewers? You said you looked through a ton of them.
Yeah. I mostly checked, I looked at some games that were close to my game and looked at who have done previews for those games, but bigger games, in my case, that would be Marvel Champions. That game is quite similar. It's also comic book based, and it's a co-op game, even though I think my game is much better. But so I looked at who had done previews and what they had said about it and reviews. And if they liked that game, they would surely like my game. That was basically my idea.
Got it. And how did you reach out to these reviewers and previewers? Was it through email? Was it through Facebook? Was it through Twitter? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I went through, most of them are YouTube based, and everyone has this about page, and you could get their either email or their Facebook page from there. But it was a mix of Facebook messages and Board Game Geek page message and emails. Yeah.
Got it. And you mentioned Board Game Geek too. Did you kind of find a community there too, or was it just to kind of outreach for reviewers there?
I built up the page around my game, but what I did there was I am not very active there in the forums and such. But what I did was I found so many lists where I could put in my game. In my case, it was games based on comic book heroes, games that are co-op, games that have a free print and play, such, and added my game to those lists. And I think I got some notice there, but not that much. But I felt it's free, why not do it? And you get some people seeing it.
Got it. Yeah. And just to go back to previewers and reviewers for 1 second here. How long in advance did you reach out to people before your campaign actually launched?
Oh, I started reaching out it's a good question. But I think some people had the game for at least 2 months before the Kickstarter. But that means I reached out probably 3 or 4 months before the Kickstarter and started talking about it.
3 or 4 months. Wow. Yeah, that's definitely a long time for the campaign.
Yeah, but I mean, it's my first time, and I really don't want things to like run out of time. And now the weird thing is like, it felt like the time before the campaign, everything was moving slowly, and then bam, the campaign hits, and you got so many people getting noticed the campaign and asked if they could get a review copy or if we could do a podcast and such. And I mean, that's awesome, but it's like, oh, I wish I knew all of these people before.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's really important, I think, for a lot of new game designers to really think about the timeline of a launch. You know, if you're launching next month, it's probably too late to start reaching out to reviewers now, right? The 3 or 4 months that you're doing, maybe even 5 or 6, is probably a good time, since all these reviewers do kind of book up too in advance.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably do it, but then you have to like pay a lot of money to get them to put it in the front of the queue of their review copies. I know a few reviewers have like, well, if it's only 4 weeks in advance or less, then you need to pay such and such to get it done in time.
Got it. And when you looked at reviewers and previewers, like, what was kind of the balance between people who didn't require any payment and people who did require payment? How did you figure out what you wanted to do between those two?
Yeah, like I used both because basically my first thought was if it's a good fit or not, and if I got a good connection with the reviewer. That meant more, but also like I'm not going to go into specific what they take because maybe that's not what they want, but the most expensive one was the one that like it really gave the most, but then there was a few that had similar price tag but had lots of few viewers and such, so I felt like I could do one of these but not all of them.
Got it. Okay, yeah, and I know that on your game, you even started off with a quote from Rado before into the body of your game.
Yeah, and I mean that was so. I mean, his review and that he mentioned the game like a few times outside of the review was so amazing, and I mean it was just so. I mean, when there is a game I want to try out, I usually check the Rado runs through first of all the ones that do reviews and previews. So that was amazing hearing that from him.
That's awesome. Pretty much getting in touch with someone you always looked up to and getting that validation from him too.
Indeed.
That's awesome. So, you talked about, being active in forums, all these reviewers and previewers, you went to conventions too. So how did you gather everyone together, your crowd, your audience, to get ready for the crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, I mean, I had the newsletter and I had a Facebook page and an Instagram page, but the Facebook page and the Instagram page is basically the same. So, I mean, as I said before, I tried to get people there, but not paying people to get there, if you know what I mean. And then basically we had this, I had great, great cooperation with this Phantom podcast in Australia, where I do stuff when I'm not doing the game as well, because I'm a big Phantom fan. So we had this pre Kickstarter interviews, and then we did this big plan that they're gonna send their podcast, and then the page launch, and then we're gonna have this live stream from Paul Grogan where he plays through one of the missions or adventures. And I commented, and I mean, we tried to push that quite far in advance, like 1 month in advance or something. We had the dates and showed it on the Facebook with the lead times.
Got it. Okay, that's really cool. And you mentioned you're working with a podcast for the Phantom in Australia. Was this because you were working on the game and you found this, or was it kind of they found you because you were working on the game?
No, I mean, it was, we started talking like a bit over a year ago, maybe 1.5 years or something. And it was that they wanted to broaden their reviews to have international perspective, because they review the Australian comic books and they looked for someone to review the Swedish ones. So I got in touch with them about that and started doing that, and they got really interested when we were talking about the game. Even though they are not gamers, they love everything with the Phantom. So
cool. That's really cool. That's like some additional exposure there too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and Australia is like one of the biggest market for the Phantom.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, so with all of this stuff going on for pre-launch, you started putting a countdown on. What happened on launch day for you? How'd you get the word out about your game on launch day?
Yeah, I mean, that's when we started off our advertisement. So I got help from Dejan had a really good friend that helped us both do the Kickstarter introduction video that we edited a bit and made an ad, and we also had an ad with just the image of the game. So we launched that ad basically at the same time as the Kickstarter launched on Facebook and Instagram. And then we got everyone who was in the mailing list and on the Facebook. And also, I took basically a few days before that. I wrote down all of the comic book groups and all the gaming groups I was in, and looked at all of their rules, like if they were okay with self-promoting. I just wrote it down, and if they weren't, I contacted their admin and asked, is it okay if I do a one-off self-marketing post at the launch of the Kickstarter? And all of them, I think, said yes. So basically, the hour between the launch and when the live stream started, I wrote, I think, 20 or 30. Everyone was unique, but unique messages on different Facebook groups telling about that I'm launching my first game, and based on what the group was, I did, like, if it was a comic book group, I was talking about the comic book character, and if it was the game design group, I was talking about it was my first game design, and so on. And I think that also got in quite a lot of attention. But if you look at the numbers, you can see that the most of the money actually comes from Kickstarter itself, from people viewing Kickstarter, like, just.
Got it. Okay, so unique messages in each group, and you were mentioning like 20 or something groups. That's a lot of groups. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I found a lot of groups like that, but I mean, that basically what comes out if you spend a lot of time in before to try to get in a lot of these groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned a lot of the funding came from Kickstarter. It seems pretty common throughout the kind of board game launches, where a large percentage actually comes directly from like a Kickstarter referral too. By the end of the campaign, do you remember approximately what percentage came from just Kickstarter backers?
It seems like around half of all the pledges is from within Kickstarter.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is a lot you need to get this initial rush to get the Kickstarter algorithms to work, I think. And I mean, I think most of it was like when we launched the game, we did all of this, and at the same time, if we go back to Rado, and I mean, there was a lot of other previewers that at the same time as the Kickstarter started, their scheduled listing showed up. So then it showed up in everyone who watches their YouTube feed, and then they could go directly from there to the page.
Got it. For these reviews that came out for your game, did you set them all to be ask for them all to be released on launch day, or did you spread them out throughout the campaign?
I wanted all of them to be on launch day on the release time at the exact hour. There was one or two that got delayed by a few days, but yeah. Got
it. Okay, so after launch day here, after you're posting in different groups, all the reviews are coming out. There's organic backers from Kickstarter. Can you tell us more about what kind of marketing you did throughout the rest of the campaign? Because you did raise about, it was I think $40,000 US, which is 300 something thousand krona.
Yeah, it was 377,000, and we only asked for 100,000, so it was, like I said, great. And you're out. We had this ad going that after a few days, we noticed that the video was not converting as much, and Instagram wasn't converting as much. So we removed those channels, and we only did the image ad and only on Facebook. And that one we did we had it on a bit more, we gave it more money in the beginning, and then we had it lower during the lull, and then at the same time, when it's 48 hours left, we started doing quadruple the amount of money giving it, because then it's also learned all the what kind of users you want to give it. And then when it was 24 hours left, I wanted to stop it, because I know the ads usually shows up later after you stopped it. So I wanted it to not show up for a day or two after the campaign is done. So I closed it a bit early. But except for that, I was basically tending podcasts and those kind of thing, and trying to be as active as possible in the comment section, because I heard that you get more comments, you would get better visibility. So I tried to always answer every comment.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a lot to do throughout the campaign. You talked about the comments, you talked about the podcast, you talked about all these things. What do you think was kind of one of the most effective things that kept your campaign going, or was the most effective overall in bringing people to back your campaign?
I think it was Rado's word. I think I have a lot of success owed by him taking enjoyment in the game and saying so. I think that was the biggest thing. And then other than that, I think it's good that I chose the existing IP, because I think it's hard to get people to trust you when you're a first-time designer. But if you have a big name it's not huge, but it's quite big name like the Phantom, I think you get a bit of trust there as well.
Got it. The existing IP. And when you were doing your community building and being active in communities, how did you balance going into forums and conversations about the Phantom versus conversations about just board games?
it's almost like Facebook is deciding that for me, because I'm not actively searching out that way. I mean, I join all these different groups, and then I just go through my flow and whatever Facebook shows me, and that I feel like, oh, I have something to say about that I go in and do.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. A lot of people just, if they're kind of using this existing IP like you're doing, they're not sure whether if like, hey, for example, like unicorn lovers for this comic will love this game more, or will people who love board games more? So that was just kind of an interesting thing that you did, that you're leveraging the two.
Yeah, and I mean, I felt basically, this maybe sound bad for the Phantom lovers out there, but I felt like there's not a lot of merchandise coming out for the Phantom. So I felt like if I do a Phantom game, even though it would be bad, Phantom lovers would probably still buy it. But to make board game people buy it, it needs to be a good game. So when it comes to quality and showing how good the game is, I mean, there is more important to show it for the board game community, because I think a lot of the Phantom community might just buy the game and have it sealed in the shelf. Hopefully they play it, but I'm not sure.
Got it. Yeah. No, I see what you mean. Like it becomes a kind of a collectible in the Phantom crowd, pretty much.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, if they are at least a little bit interested in games, I think they will try it out and enjoy
it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show here and just sharing all your insights about the campaign, about the pre-marketing, the marketing during the campaign. I know that people are going to really love it, just listening to what you have to say. Before we go, what's kind of next for you, for the Phantom the card game? Are there any new games that you're thinking of launching soon, or what's in the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're working on we're getting help from Paul Grogan to get all the cards and the rule book proofread. So we're working on that, and when that is done, we want it to be printed as soon as possible. So that is like immediate next. But at the same time, I'm working on doing an expansion, and I'm right now working on getting a good expansion for the Phantom, but I also have a few smaller games that I might do also. But my goal is to get this fully done before I launch a new Kickstarter. I want the games to be in the backer's hand before launching a new Kickstarter.
Got it. That's really cool. And if listeners are just interested in learning more about you and about the game, where should they go to?
Yeah, I mean, we have a homepage called gamesbylyck.com, and we have a Facebook page called Phantom Card Game. I think that's the short name, or it's called the Phantom the Card Game. And you could do a late pledge at GameFound. Just search for the Phantom the Card Game there. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It has been my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Board Game Marketing Podcast. For daily tips and advice, find us in the Board Game Marketing group on Facebook. See you next week.